One extra miles caught on camera, the supercars with noise levels as loud as a jet taking off. Well, Kensington and Chelsea have clocked almost 300 drivers hitting over 100 decibels, and that is 30 times more than the legal limit. Those drivers can expect £100 fines to follow, but as our political correspondent Simon Harris reports, that's not likely to have much of an impact.
Drivers show off their skills in the middle of the night in Kensington. They might not realise, but they're being filmed by a new type of traffic camera. So too are these cars racing along a road in Holland Park. The cameras are equipped with microphones, so they record the number plate and the noise.
Residents have said to me it's like having an aeroplane taking off in your bedroom and a helicopter taking off. The decibel levels are that extreme.
Karen and her daughter Alexandra have lived in Knightsbridge for 30 years and are often tormented by nocturnal boy racers in supercars.
They've now been joined by lots of what might be called sort of souped-up bangers. And they have this thing that the exhaust, they can have it souped up so it goes bang, bang, bang. I think it's called popping, but it sounds more like rifle shooting, really.
Kensington and Chelsea Council has bought 4 acoustic cameras which capture any noise louder than 100 decibels. Anyone driving a car loud enough to trigger a camera can be fined, but it's only £100, which isn't likely to make much of a dent in the bank balance of someone who can afford a supercar. The council wants the government to allow bigger fines.
We would find it really helpful, and I'm sure this would make it a more practical solution for other places in the capital if we were able to raise the fixed penalty notice tariffs from £100 to possibly even up to £400.
Yanni knows a thing or two about supercars.
This is a Lamborghini Urus Nero Edition 4-litre V8 twin turbo with a sports exhaust.
His workshop in Enfield customises supercars for wealthy owners. It's known as car wrapping.
Cars nowadays come with sports exhaust. They are very, very loud. So if someone's revving their car or if someone's driving up and down like an idiot, granted. But if you're just driving your car and you're enjoying your car that you've spent a lot of money on, you can't stop someone from driving it because it's got a loud exhaust.
If you're wondering how loud his exhaust is, according to our noise meter, 115 decibels. Simon Harris, ITV News, Enfield.
Good evening. Over the many years that Nazanin Zaghari Ratcliffe has spent imprisoned in Iran, there have been false hopes before. Nazanin was sentenced for spying charges 5 years ago, which she's always denied. But the Hampstead mum had her British passport returned today, and her Iranian lawyer thinks that she could be freed soon. The Prime Minister described discussions as delicate, and for her family, who have campaigned for so hard and so long, there is at least some real hope today. Our political correspondent Simon Harris has the latest.
At a conference in London, the Prime Minister was keeping his cards close to his chest. He's been blamed in the past for making things worse for Nazanin Zaghari Ratcliffe. It's not a mistake he wanted to repeat today.
I think that it's very important when you've got quite delicate discussions going on, negotiations going on in Tehran about some of our most difficult consular cases, particularly Nazanin Zaghari Ratcliffe, that we should say as little as possible until unless and until the thing is actually concluded.
The first clue that Mrs Zaghari Ratcliffe might be heading home was in a tweet from her London MP. Tulip Sadiq posted, "I am very pleased to say that Nazanin Zaghari Ratcliffe has been given her British passport back. She's still at her family home in Tehran."
It definitely feels like a very positive step. There is some caution though, our family have been here before in that we've had high hopes that she's been about to be released and they haven't materialised. So in many ways we're extremely excited and there's been lots of WhatsApp messages back and forth within the family, but there's also some caution.
Nazanin Zaghari Ratcliffe was arrested and sentenced to 5 years in prison in April 2016. A year later, the family lost their appeal against her sentence. In March 2020, she was released under house arrest after a COVID outbreak in her prison. A year later, she was handed another 1-year jail sentence after being convicted of a new charge.
Nazanin was an ordinary person doing something that any of us should expect to be able to do, which was to go and see her family, and she became a pawn in politics that was absolutely not of her own making, and I hope that situation now will be coming to a close for her and the other British nationals held in Iran.
In the 1970s, Iran paid for British tanks which were never supplied. There's speculation Britain has now repaid the £400 million Iran was claiming.
There was hesitation about paying something that felt so much like a ransom. Of course, it isn't a ransom. It is a debt that an international court has said we owe Iran, and you have to pay your debts. Whoever you incur them with is irrelevant. If you have a debt, it's a debt.
For Nazanin's husband Richard and their daughter Gabriella, there is real hope tonight that the long-awaited family reunion is just days away.
Simon, we didn't hear from Nazanin's husband Richard today, which is quite unusual.
Richard has done so much to publicise his wife's imprisonment. He's a determined and prolific campaigner, always willing to share an opinion whenever there's a development in Nazanin's case. But today, not a word. And I think that might be quite telling. He, more than anyone else, will not want anything said in public which might jeopardise Nazanin's release. We did hear from his family, from his sister, that they are cautiously optimistic. We heard from the Prime Minister that the discussions going on in Tehran are very delicate. But from the government, nothing more than that. They're not saying anything. And I think it's easy to understand why. There have been too many cases in this imprisonment of this lady from Hampstead where hopes have been raised and they've come to nothing.
OK, well, we'll keep an eye on it. Simon, thank you.
Tonight's late debate programme will be focused on Nazanin and Anousheh's return. Here is our political correspondent Simon Harris with a look ahead.
Nazanin's story is well known thanks to the determined campaign by her husband Richard. But what about Anoushe? For half of his time in prison, his ordeal was largely unknown. As recently as 8 months ago, his family shared their frustrations at what they saw as a lack of action by the government. I've been talking about the campaign to free him with his MP.
So, I mean, for Nazanin to lose 6 years of her life and for Anousheh to lose 5 years of his life, that's absolutely atrocious. And they'd been told right from the start this was due to the IMS debt that was needed to be paid back to Iran from our country. It shouldn't have taken so long. It was their money. It needed to go back to them. There's lots of arguments that would be given about various sanctions that were in place, but it could have been given back through humanitarian aid. It's been achieved now, but I don't see why that couldn't have been achieved sooner.